What's up, guys? Today I'm going to be learning about an important moment in Manchester United history, the Munich Air Disaster explained. I don't really know what happened, so I'm going to check this video out and hopefully it's going to explain the whole event and why it means so much to football.
Just after the war, under the Scottish manager Matt Busby, Manchester United became one of the most brilliant football teams in England. They were the first English club to enter the European Cup. The following year, on their way back from Yugoslavia after a match with Red Star Belgrade, which ended in a draw, Busby, his players and staff boarded a BEA aircraft, and disaster struck. 23 dead, including some of the best sportsmen on earth. Blame for the tragedy fell on one man, and the effort to clear his name spanned more than a decade and put one nation against another in the bitter struggle for the truth behind one of the worst tragedies in the history of sports. But what really happened? Welcome to this episode of Dwayne's Aviation. A wise man once said, smash the like button and subscribe to our channel. It was on February 6, 1958, Munich Airport, West Germany. A British pilot prepares to bring home an extraordinary group of passengers, the Manchester United football team. In the 1950s, they are the most famous sportsmen on the planet. The 21 players and staff were traveling in style. They were on board a British European Airways Airspeed Ambassador, a luxurious twin-engine aircraft also known
so tiny
as the
for
Elizabethan.
being a luxury
the pilot
airliner.
in charge was Captain James Tade, a 37-year-old former Royal Air Force flight lieutenant with an impeccable service record. The co-pilot, Captain Kenneth Raymond, who joined BEA in 1947, was also a former Royal Air Force flight lieutenant and a Second World War flying ace, who shot down 5 German fighters, 1 Italian plane, and a V-1 flying bomb during the Second World War. Raymond and Tade had agreed that on this flight they will switch seats because Captain Raymond was going to handle the aircraft and he is used to handling it from the left-hand side. But it was against company policy, which states that the commander should always sit in the left seats. But it's a rule that's frequently broken. In light snow with the temperature hovering around freezing, Tade and Raymond start their first takeoff run. Raymond abandoned the takeoff after Tade noticed that the boost pressure gauge fluctuated as the plane reached full power, and the engine sounded odd while accelerating. The Elizabethan taxied back to the start of the runway for a second attempt. The second attempt was made 3 minutes later, but called off after 40 seconds because the engines were running on an over-rich mixture, causing them to over-accelerate, a common problem for the Elizabethan. British European Airways Flight 609.
Surely I would be done trying to fly,
attempt from Munich Airport.
but they're going for a third try.
Captain Tade has just 2 minutes before the takeoff window closes. If the third attempt is not successful, the flight may be cancelled, and his famous passengers may be grounded in Munich. The runway is more than 1,900 meters long. Even with their plan for a gradual acceleration to compensate for the boost pressure problem, the Elizabethan should be able to lift off just past 1,200 meters. The plane reached V1, the speed at which a takeoff cannot safely be abandoned, the point of no return. They kept accelerating to reach V2, 119 knots, where the plane can become airborne. But something goes wrong. They suddenly lose speed.
Can't believe they've tried a third time.
Crashed through the fence, hitting a house 300 meters beyond the end of the runway. Within minutes of the crash, help begins to arrive from the airport and nearby farms. 2 German rescuers climbed up on the wing and freed Kenneth Raymond from the wreckage. He is badly injured. 21 people are dead, and 7 are Manchester United players. The head coach, secretary, and trainer are also dead. 7 more team members are seriously injured. The manager, Matt Busby, is in critical condition. Manchester United, one of the world's greatest football teams, is wiped out. 6 hours after the crash, the man assigned to investigate it arrives on the scene, and he finds that some parts of the wing are covered with ice, and assumes that the entire wing was coated with ice before the crash. The following day, the co-pilot Kenneth Raymond died of a brain injury. James Thane is left to face a wall of questions on his own. Investigators draw on witness testimony of snow on the wing and said they didn't de-ice the plane. The temperature in the afternoon of the crash hovered around 0 centigrade. It was not cold enough for snow to create ice. But the German experts note that the Elizabethan has just descended from 25,000 feet, where the air temperature was negative 25 degrees Celsius. They concluded that snow falling on the frozen wings would have turned instantly to ice. Thane countered the testimony that he turned the wing de-icing heaters on descending to Munich. They stated that since every other aircraft that left Munich that day was de-iced, but not the Elizabethan, the crew's failure to de-ice is the leading cause of the accident. In March 1959, a year after the tragedy of Munich, the German government releases its official report.
The ice on the wings cause engine
full blame for the accident at the feet of Captain James Thane. The German investigation also suggests that by agreeing to switch seats, Captain Thane may have created confusion of which pilot was in charge. James Thane's reputation is destroyed. A former RAF officer and an accomplished commercial pilot became a full-time farmer. But Thane is certain that the ice of the wing didn't cause the crash, so he decided to launch his own investigation. Looking back at what happened, the plane reached 117 knots, but then slowed dramatically. Ice on the wing can't explain that sudden loss of speed, but something else can. Thane therefore rules out ice on the wing as a possible factor and focuses on other possibilities. And then he sees the real cause of the crash: slush on the runway. German authorities countered that it was because other planes that took off from the same runway didn't have slush problems. But that day, other flights took off from the first two tails of the runway. Since the Elizabethan accelerated more slowly to compensate for the boost pressure problem, it rolls further into the unused part of the runway with deep slush. Still, the German investigators dismissed the slush as a possible cause, insisting it was ice on the wing. In 1961, BEA officially fires Thane, primarily for violating the company's policy against switching seats. The loss of his job made Thane more determined than ever to clear his name. He writes letter after letter to both the British and German governments, urging them to reopen the investigation. In 1965, those efforts paid off. German authorities agreed to review the investigation of the Munich disaster. He hoped to clear his name with his last shot at investigation. That hope has been stirred by some new research. Britain's Royal Aircraft Establishment has conducted a slush test on the Elizabethan aircraft. In run after run, the plane decelerates from 117 to about 105 knots. The same loss of speed was reported by Thane. But after a 2-day hearing, German authorities were not swiveled by the new evidence. Instead of clearing Thane, they condemn him further, saying by switching seats, the captain made things worse. This was a crushing blow to Thane. In 1967, Sir Harold Wilson is the Prime Minister of the UK. After attending a Manchester United game, he makes a comment that set up a media frenzy. He said he believed James Thane is a victim of injustice. In 1968, British investigators conducted a study to determine whether slush or wing ice caused the Munich disaster. Their findings immediately called to question the accuracy of the two German reports. 3 separate experts determined that the amount of ice found on the wing would not be enough to prevent takeoff. In March 1969, 11 years after the crash, the British government formally cleared James Thane. But BEA doesn't give him his job back.
Decade, man.
Captain Thane does not fly again. In Germany, the aviation authority never exonerates him. 10 years after the accident, Manchester United became the first English team to win the European Cup. A cup they might have won in 1958 if not for the aviation
Glory,
disaster
glory. Man
that
United.
devastated the finest team of players that
I'm
the
not-
British had ever assembled.
Not insinuating any, fandom, but all right. Well, so this video kind of just covered some of the, the blame that's been spread around for what happened. Unbelievable story. I love to see some of the footage of how Manchester United fans rally around this as kind of like an identity moment for the club, and kind of just like, this is who we are, like the way that they fought back from this disaster, and see the moments where people are paying their respects, and how that they never forget. And honestly, and I'm not trying to compare tragedies or anything like this, it honestly reminds me a lot of the way that Americans treat September 11th. Obviously, September 11th happens on a really massive scale, and there are thousands of casualties. But there's a similar approach to how we never forget. There are kids growing up today that weren't alive when it happened. I was 3 when it happened, but we take it, very seriously. A day of remembrance for the tragedy that happened, and so you can see that in United fans, and seeing them wear T-shirts at 1958, and they'll never forget what happened. And this is kind of an iconic moment for the club, and very important to understanding United history. Big moment. So if you enjoy this video, you enjoy my football content, then go ahead and subscribe to the channel. I've got like 70% of my viewership are not subscribers. We're at 12K right now, and I would love to have your support. On Patreon, I'm watching Ted Lasso, so if you enjoy Ted Lasso, join the Patreon. It's as low as like $1 a month. You get my Ted Lasso watch-along videos. Or if you can support with even more money, that's even better, because it is not cheap to be a full-time seminary student. Anyway, I'd love to see you over there at the Patreon if that's something that you fancy yourself supporting my channel. With that being said, I'll see you guys in the next video.